This is probably the weirdest time to buy a GPU. People are trusting AMD over NVIDIA, so this is something I never expected to hear. But I got my hands on not just the 9070 XT, but also the 5070. And which one should you pick? The 5070 I was actually able to pick up through the Newegg Shuffle for $549, the MSRP. An MSRP GPU in this day and age is not something that you can kind of scoff at. This is impressive. This is the MSI Shadow 2X, and I'm honestly very impressed by it. Super small card, runs really smooth, and it isn't very power hungry, and it's pretty quiet. I mean, look at it, it's a 2-fan. The only real issue that I run into with this GPU is the fact that it only has a 250 watt power limit. Something that with a little bit of knowledge on how to use NV Flash can be super quickly remedied by flashing the Palette 300 watt BIOS. There's a bunch of 300 watt BIOSes, that's just the one I picked, and it worked. Gave me 50 watts more power, which is actually something super important because in games you might actually run into that 250 watt power limit. This only has a single BIOS though, so be a little bit careful when flashing BIOSes. If you don't have an extra GPU laying around or your integrated graphics does not exist, I'd be a little careful. I do have a guide though on how to flash your NVIDIA GPU from like 4 years ago, so make sure you check that out. I'll link it down below in the description. The 9070 XT I ended up getting on launch day at Micro Center. I drove all the way up there to pick it up, and this is one of the higher end models, the ASRock Taichi OC to be exact. I picked this one up simply because it has a 12 volt high power and the max power limit available on these. This one I picked up for $729 before tax. So this isn't an MSRP model of $599, but also there really are no MSRP models anymore. It is basically impossible to find one anywhere near that $599 price mark, $600. Instead, they're all about $730, what I picked this one up for. That's why I picked this one up at the time, is because I knew that there would be a price hike, and I'd much rather buy a high-end model for the real MSRP of $730 than a cut-down one that this one just felt like a better buy. So 5070 for $550 versus 9070 XT for $730. That's a 32% price difference, and this is something that you need to keep in mind when you're actually looking at these benchmarks. These cards are not similar in price at all. If you got lucky and you got one at MSRP, yes, this is a better buy. But at now this price hike, you kind of got to keep it in mind a little bit. Both these cards I got pre-tariff though. And if you are interested in either one of these, I will have an affiliate link down below in the description for both these cards if you are interested in buying. All benchmarks are done in 1440p just because I just think that is what makes sense for these cards. You can use 1080p, but they're going to be about the same at that point. I want GPU bound scenarios. On my 9950X3D PC fully tuned PBO with 2x16 DDR5 running at 6000 CL30 at 2000 FCOK, fully tuned subtimings. This 5070 was running with the memory slider maxed out at plus 2000, something that every single 50 series card so far that I've tested can do, including my client PCs that I've worked on, and about 3150 megahertz on the core. The 9070 XT was running a negative 50 millivolt undervolt. These cards need to be undervolted. They cannot be overclocked on the core. They just run too hot. The hotspot's too high. With 2700 megahertz on the VRAM with fast timing preset. I did end up also using the minimal driver with more clock tool that just gave me a little bit more performance and something that I do recommend on AMD. I also included my 4090, which is running 3 gigahertz on an XOC BIOS, just because it was the fastest graphics card I had at the time. Till I got this. For drivers on both of these, NVIDIA and AMD, I was using the latest recommended or game-ready driver that was at the time of testing, which was about 2 weeks ago. I got busy with finals, so I couldn't really film a video at that time, but it was the most recent at that time. I had no driver issues on either brand. Getting into the benchmarks though, 3D Mark shows about what you expect. The 4090 destroys both the 5070 and the 9070 XT as they should. The 9070 XT is beating the 5070 in everything but Firestrike Ultra. I mean, Speedway is close for this 5070 because NVIDIA always has that ray tracing power, but Firestrike is a slight win actually as well for the 5070 because of AMD just not being amazing in DX11. AMD kind of doubled down on DX12 years ago, like back in like 2018, and they kind of aged like fine wine. Every game uses DX12 or Vulkan now, and that is where AMD has always shined in their architecture. DX11 is where they suffer. Cyberpunk 2077 was done with the 1440p Ultra preset, no ray tracing, no upscaling, and rasterization shows the true power of these cards. 9070 XT is 24% faster than the 5070 in-game, and the feeling between 120 to 150 FPS is noticeable smoothness, with more importantly the increase in the minimal FPS, which is really what matters in games. I've always said this, but the lows are what matter in your game, not that average FPS. This is something FrameGen can't do. Take notes, NVIDIA. Marvel Rivals is the one esports title out that is just pure GPU. If you have a faster GPU, you're gonna get higher FPS. And there's about a 10% increase in FPS for the 9070 XT over the RTX 5070. Something to note is that the 0.1% lows are 15% higher on the 9070 XT, which I was able to tell when playing the actual game is a much smoother gaming experience. Although, if you have something like a 1440p 240Hz OLED, the 5070 will be able to be just fine. You'll be able to hit that 240 FPS in games. And also, you can turn FrameGen on. I'm opposed to FrameGen in this game, in any esports title, but I guess you could. Probably stay away from it though. Call of Duty Black Ops 6 is on average over 40% faster for the 9070 XT over the 5070. It looks more like I'm actually comparing my RTX 4090 to the 9070 XT than the 9070 XT than the 5070. It's insane how fast AMD is in Call of Duty. If you're playing COD, the extra money is objectively worth it on the 9070 XT. And I do remember actually when I first plugged in this 9070 XT on launch day, I started playing Call of Duty on my 4K 240Hz OLED, and I was like, whoa, this is a very comparable experience to my 4090, and it was something that I would have been perfectly fine with gaming on all day. Fortnite shows very close in average FPS for all three of these, with the 9070 XT winning in the lows, meaning that this card will be the smoothest gaming experience, but they're all so close and they're all such high FPS that it won't really matter. DX11 performance mode, so actually AMD is doing good in a DX11 title. It's so impressive, in fact, that I've actually been telling all the Fortnite pros whose PCs I optimize and I work with that if they're going to upgrade their GPU, to buy the 9070 XT over any 50 series. Which one should you pick? 5070, 9070 XT? It honestly depends. I'd say if you play esports and find the cheapest 9070 XT you can find, if you can find one close to that MSRP of $599, it's kind of a no-brainer. Gotta do a little bit of undervolting and then it'll run perfectly fine. You can honestly, even out of the box, it works just fine. No driver issues, nothing to complain about. The 9070 XT is plain and simple faster than the 5070 in rasterization, as expected, and you get 4 GB of extra VRAM. Something that in any of these titles, I did not run into any VRAM issues actually on the 5070, which has 12 GB. So if you're playing in 1440p, you're probably fine, to be honest. The only thing that makes me hesitant is just, is this $599 MSRP real? I don't believe so. Instead, they've all been closer to like $700, $730, which is 20% higher. If there's a 20% tariff, it makes sense. In secondhand, they've been selling for like $900. Puts it in a way different price bracket, and instead, you'd be much better comparing the 9070 XT to a 5070 Ti. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know which graphics card you would pick out of these two. Let me tell you what I'm doing. I'm selling both of these because I don't want to keep them. If you are stuck at that $550 price though, the 5070 is going to be a fine option for you. You're gonna have no issues. You can turn on FrameGen if you need a little bit more FPS in those single player titles, and you'll be fine. If you've never experienced true high FPS, this is fine. I got some flack on that in my 2 videos ago, but it is true. If you want FPS like you saw in this video, make sure you hit the link down below. Check out chambertech.net and get yourself a PC optimization, where I will personally max out your PC and make sure you're getting the highest FPS possible out of your rig. But hope you guys have enjoyed. Hit the like button down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.